You want to do anything after this?
I don't know. Kind of just want to go home and see my wife.
Oh, really?
Play some Heroes of the Storm or something.
Try to beat traffic?
That would also be a good idea, yes, now that you mention it.
Well, hopefully we don't spend forever talking about this.
Oh, we will. And I'll be stuck in traffic.
Alrighty. Welcome back to the Why Do I Talk to You podcast. This is Saul Starsheep 4.
And Dave Naple.
Boy, what a momentous occasion this is. The Incredibles 2.
Yeah, it actually happened.
It actually happened. Sheesh. Now, as you guys probably know, we hold the first movie, Incredibles, in the highest of regards, Dave especially.
Yeah.
I mean, I hold it pretty high up too. Dave, this is straight up your favorite Pixar movie, though, Incredibles 1, right?
Yep.
Yeah, as we've said before. So, and a sequel to The Incredibles was almost the last thing we wanted.
Yeah.
With the exception of Toy Story 2, you know, Dave doesn't hold a lot of the Pixar sequels in high regard.
You?
I mean,
Toy Story 3 is, I don't like as much as 2, but it's fine. But like Finding Dory, Cars 2. I still haven't seen Cars 3. I've heard some people say they actually like Cars 3. But
really?
Yeah, very few. But I have heard it, and Monsters U is fine. A lot of people disagree on that, but
I like Monsters U.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's more than fine.
Yeah.
Cars 2, blech.
Yeah. Cars 2 is actually bordering on that so bad it's good. Honestly, you know.
I don't know, because it is going to be a long time. So
we did watch it once together.
We did. I think I had to force Dave into it because I knew it was going to be bad. And I think we had a lot of fun watching it because of how bad it was.
God,
but you cannot pay me to see Cars 3. Like, I don't know if it's on Netflix. Finding Dory is on Netflix, and I couldn't last like 5 minutes.
You did not last 5 minutes. I tried to show you that, but you were just like, no. I
was just like, Dave, can we turn this off? I'm not even having fun. But
good.
I like Monsters U. I really do. And I like the Toy Story trilogy.
Soon to be a quadrilogy.
Soon.
Anyway.
We'll talk about that soon.
Someday.
So anyways, but again, Incredibles is up there. Very, very up there. And
it's one of those things that was like so good and so pure, you don't want to see it sullied with a bad sequel that's going to be a cash grab.
Exactly,
you know?
the risk of it. I mean, Finding Dory came out before this, and that's like, well, that's not a good sign. But you know, when this all was announced, I was very apprehensive, extremely apprehensive. Then Brad Bird was attached to write and direct again, so I was like, oh,
all right,
you know, well, at least we have that, you know, and all the same voice cast except for a couple of people came back, all the primaries, you know, and so. I was like, of course I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
But I'm just nervous, you know? And then like more stuff started coming out, which was like small teasers of just Mr. Incredible and Jack seeming very sort of Mr. Mommy.
Yeah.
That didn't instill a whole lot of confidence.
No, that did not instill a lot of confidence at all. All the trailers felt like they were showing you the whole movie in the trailer, right? That's what it felt like it was one of those moments, right?
Yeah.
Because you also had what's-his-face, the guy who winds up funding the whole thing. He's like, I want to bring Incredibles back. Yeah, baby. And you're like, you're going to be the bad guy.
You're totally not the bad guy, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Some rich guy in a suit all the time. Oh, yeah.
Who's probably not important for any reason other than bringing the Incredibles back. It's like, oh, you're totally not the bad guy. We'll get back to this, by the way. Spoilers all over the place.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're not going to hide anything.
Yeah, that should always be a given. The only one we tried with was Undertale, and I don't know how well we did, but
yeah, I don't know.
We're not really gonna bother with much of the rest of these.
Yeah,
so.
I don't really care either way.
But yeah, so it just looked like you were getting like the whole movie, and it was just gonna be really tropey and really not good, just like a generic superhero movie, you know?
Yeah,
but
I did like that it was revealed that it was gonna start right where Incredibles 1 left off.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then that was it. You know, there's nothing left to do but just to wait for it.
Yep.
You know, advertising a Palooza, of course, and like any other Disney movie. So Dave and I and our wives got to see a premiere of it.
Almost watched a double feature.
So we So I paid for our tickets just because Dave and Sam had to drive quite a ways to get up here. I wanted to do it, and
nice, thank you.
It just happened to be IMAX, and I was like, well, IMAX is reserved seating, so I just wanted to make sure for that. And then the movie starts, and there's like a nice little featurette of like Brad Bird and some of the other actors like talking like
right before that they showed like a big image for like IMAX double feature Incredibles and Incredibles 2, and we kind of looked at each other like
we're like wait,
is that what we
hold
hang on? It was like 7:30 at night, and we were like, I don't know if I'm up for this because I'm old now.
So I like frantically looked on like my Fandango receipts to see if it was like, you know, in fact double feature, but I was like, guys, it doesn't say double feature. What's up?
But and then the Brad Bird, like they were totally talking about it as if they're like, thanks for coming to the double feature special thing, and you're like,
I was like, oh no, guys, I'm so sorry. I felt so bad if I had inadvertently purchased a double feature for us. All of us old people.
Yeah. Apparently, though, he didn't.
Good. Luckily not.
Because then the short came.
Oh, that's
like,
short.
This isn't the old short, so this is a good sign.
What was the short?
It was, I forget what it was called. Bow?
No. For Incredibles 1.
Oh, wasn't it the bird one?
No, that was Monsters.
Are you sure?
No.
Oh, no, it was the Jackalope.
Oh, Bounden?
Yeah, it was Bounden.
Oh, that's one of my least favorite ones.
It wasn't a great one.
Yeah.
It was voiced by the guy who voiced that one dude in The Incredibles, who I assume must be dead because he was not in this one, even though his character was in it.
You're correct.
There you go.
Anyways, so it was not the double feature. Yeah, Bow came on.
Hey, Bounden. Look at that.
Whatever. one of the better Pixar shorts to come out, I think.
I agree. I thought it was a good short.
Nothing really to say about it. You should just see it.
You should see it, yeah.
So then the movie started, and it was not the old splash animation. So we were like, oh, phew. Thank goodness.
That's right. It was like a very Incredibles themed, like Disney castle logo. It's really neat.
Because back when Incredibles 1 came out, they weren't particularly owned by Disney just yet.
I guess not. I don't remember what.
I don't think the acquisition happened. Is what I'm saying. I don't think.
No, I don't think it matters.
Oh, well,
whatever.
Anyways, so the movie itself starts with an interrogation of Tony Ridinger and Rick Dicker, the government guy.
Like I remember his name too.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, well, you know me. I'm pretty
Rick Dicker, who does not have his original voice actor.
No.
Very conspiciously. And it's too bad.
Why are you holding on this so much?
It was just very conspicuous to me. That's all. The new voice actor didn't have it in him for this voice. Like the original voice was like so low and gravelly and fit the character and like the era so well. And this guy just sounded very generic.
Why are you holding on this so much?
He wasn't that good. He wasn't a good voice actor for this character.
My goodness,
he wasn't. Okay,
he has like a grand total of like 6 lines in the movie.
It's not.
It's not. It's not a big deal. Oh wow, because it seems to me
it's not a big deal, but he's not very good.
Good lord.
Whatever.
Anyways, so we start out with an interrogation there because Tony is like, I don't really know what I just saw.
Yeah.
And he's talking about Violet specifically. We started right at Dash's like track meet that we ended on the first
when
movie.
The Underminer is
yeah, and then they're locking out, then the Underminer comes out and they all like put on their suits and everything's happening. However, Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl just sort of like take care of it on their own, and they force one of them, Dash or Violet, to watch over Jack Jack.
Well, they ask one of them to hold the perimeter, and they ask the other one to just watch Jack Jack.
So, of course, Dash runs away.
Yeah, takes the perimeter or whatever.
And Violet is, like, getting, like, frustrated and yada yada. She throws her mask down in absolute anger. But who should see take off her mask but Tony Ridinger. And she's just all like, hi. So then comes into a really, really awesome action sequence of the Incredibles trying to stop the Underminer. What he's doing is that he's undermining, and he's
basically got this huge tunnel complex underneath the city, and explosives rigged up. So when he pushes the button, they blow up, and like a building will fall underground or whatever. And of course, it's the bank, so he's gonna do that to the bank and rob the bank or whatever. So
he does that, and
tunneling
fight
scene with Mr. Incredible ensues.
Yeah, but he actually gets the bank under there and he steals all the money and they're fighting. But then the Underminer escapes, but his big old tunneler thingy is like still going.
He like escapes and is like escape tunneler, and so the big tunneler he just left like aimed towards whatever, like City Hall or something.
Yeah, it like breaches, and so now it's like on the surface, and so Frozone comes back too and tries to help out. They're making a big mess, but like they're trying to stop it, and eventually they do.
I don't actually remember what Elastigirl is doing in all this.
She is in there also, and she overloads the system. So
right. By the time she gets there, Underminer had already like got away.
Yeah,
and like they're both trying to like, how do we stop this thing? Yeah,
and but then they do stop it from hitting City Hall.
They blow something up. That's right. They blow up like the boiler.
Yeah. And then Frozone like ices it like to stop it from actually getting there. For the record, anybody listening, we've only seen this movie once.
So pity us.
Well,
give us a break.
We would have liked to have seen it twice, but we're trying to get this out as fast as we can.
Sure.
But I mean,
got that kind of money.
But we do remember. Yeah, we don't.
Real talk.
But we remember enough.
I guess you'll be the judge of that.
This was another situation where we decidedly like halted a lot of our conversation.
We couldn't quite halt it right after.
No, but we halted. We didn't talk about it at all during the weekend.
No.
So this is still relatively fresh. Similar to our Infinity War cast.
Yeah.
So anyways, there's a big old mess. They left a big old mess. And of course, nobody is happy that they stopped the Underminer. Typical superhero stuff.
Stopped, yeah. The police come and they like open the top of the thing. They're like, freeze, you're under arrest. And I think like somehow Violet and Dash had made their way there too.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Or whatever. And they're like, you're under arrest. And they take him into custody. And they're like, there's insurance for this kind of thing. And they're like, well, would you just want us to stand around and do nothing? Like, well, did you catch him? And they're like, no. Like, did he rob the bank still? Like, yeah. Like, yeah, you should have done nothing. You're worthless. You suck. And Mr. Incredible's like, bumble, grumble, grumble. And that's basically it.
To be fair, the supers are still like hated in this world too.
Well, technically they're still underground, right? Yeah. Like at the end of the last one, like Dick was like, oh, like we got you covered, or like the government has assured me that something, but it was kind of vague, and they probably still didn't actually want them doing stuff like this, but maybe the Incredibles felt like they could. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to.
No, I guess. They're not supposed to. I think the Incredibles just sort of thought that like, oh, they can still sort of get away with it.
Maybe, yeah.
As long as they kept their identities or whatever. But I'm assuming the Underminer is like their first time ever actually trying and acting it.
Yeah, I would assume so.
And it just made a big catastrophe,
Yeah.
So yeah, then they're told by Rick Dicker, because they have to obviously relocate, that and their house was destroyed by Syndrome's jet.
Oh, right, that too.
That they're just living in a hotel for like 2 weeks, and that the government is canceling the superhero relocation program.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what that means. Like, if they happen to come out of hiding again, are they just gonna?
Yeah, it was kind of vague. I guess it just meant that they weren't going to help him out anymore. I assume that Rick is like part of that program, and that's why he's helping them out or whatever. And like that's part of the thing.
Yeah.
But I guess like that's all I've got, because they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? We're only going to live in this like hotel for like 2 more weeks or whatever. And
then Rick is also like, and that also means that his job is sacked too.
Yeah, he sounds like I also got fired.
Because of you.
So thanks for that, I
guess. So yeah, they're living in a hotel for a while. I guess
there's a big awkward like dinner scene where they're like kind of talking about it.
This scene was pretty cool though. Like,
it was a good scene.
This scene, like, Incredibles 1, as we spoke about before, like, opens up more like adultish themes, deeper themes, I guess I should say, not necessarily adultish themes, but deeper themes than just like a regular superhero movie because of like the family aspect, And with this one, now we're talking a lot more government involvement, and there's a big debate, like, because Mr. Incredible is still heated after like the whole "so we should have just done nothing" sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Elastigirl though is like, well, that's the law and we're supposed to follow the law, and he's all like, well, what if the law is unfair? And she's like, well, there's laws to fix that, and yada yada. Really hot button issues, especially in this day and age.
I guess it was kind of heady. In the first movie, it felt much more like Mr. Incredible was clearly in the wrong, right? But in this one, you're kind of like, I don't know. It was a bit more balanced,
Yeah.
Like it felt a bit more like you still logically, and this probably depends on personality too. Like, I'm very logic driven, so I tended to kind of agree with Elastigirl, but I was still kind of like, but like, Mr. Incredible's kind of right.
Yeah.
Like, this really sucks, and it's not really cool, and it feels And his character is really portrayed well here because he's obviously like losing his temper. Like Elastigirl is much better at like conveying her opinion like much more intellectually and much more backed up by facts, where Mr. Incredible is just very emotional.
Yeah.
And so you feel like he's kind of losing, but at the same time you're just like, it's not like the first one. He feels much more justified somehow.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a good scene, I thought.
It borders on, you're like, didn't we kind of grow past this in the first movie? It feels like we're rehashing this, but at the same time you're like, but it's different. It is different. It's interesting.
Well,
good.
It was just nice to see that dynamic, and that clearly, like 15 years later, they can still write that dynamic too.
Yeah, that's true.
And it wasn't old. It wasn't like old hat. We've seen it. Like it was actually refreshing.
Yeah.
So then they're talking still how like they need to get a job, or like somebody has to. And
yeah, basically after dinner they wind up out by the pool at the motel while the kids are inside watching TV, and they're talking like, well, guess one of us needs to get a job. We're gonna be homeless.
And then Lucius comes up
dressed as Frozone.
No, he's like in a trench coat.
No, you're right. He's in a trench coat.
And like he talks about this new opportunity that was presented to him, that like they want some people. This person named Winston Dever wants to talk to them. He's the head of
industry. I don't know. DevTech.
DevTech, that's right.
Is it actually DevTech?
DeverTech.
Whatever. Who cares?
Devereaux.
He's like, it's like this like marketing / like technology / like television tech company or something like that. Whatever.
He's rich man.
He's a big wig.
Slight Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Sort of. Anyway, so Frozone says, he's like, well, I mean, what have I got to lose? I'm gonna totally see him.
Yeah.
And he's like, he wants to see you guys as well. He's like, you should just come with us. And of course, like, because he tells Frozone that he is interested in getting supers like legal and like in the nice line.
Yeah, like Lucius like runs off and doesn't get caught by the cops at the end of the whole Underminer incident. And so like the guy's limo driver, you like see him and amidst all the kerfuffle, the guy's limo driver finds Lucius and is like, oh, hey, wait up. And he's like, sorry, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm illegal. And he's like, well, wouldn't you like to change that? And Lucius is like, So yeah.
Yeah, so they go on out, of course, Mr. Incredible's all like,
yeah, he's ready to go. And like, he tells him like, oh, wear your old suits or whatever, because he likes, the classic stuff, which I don't know why they have those on them. But I mean, I guess they're packed up and living out of the motel. So
did you notice that there wasn't the patch job anymore on Mr. Incredible's sleeve? I
can't believe that you noticed that.
I was looking for that specifically.
We got you, Pixar. You thought you could slip that one by us? Not by this level of podcast, no sir. Not by W Diddy, you can't.
Brad Bird, we demand an explanation.
We demand
and a free trip to Disney World.
We demand an HD remake fixing that. Anyway,
so they go into this big mansion type thing, whatever, yada.
Yeah.
They meet Winston Dever, and again, okay. So let me just say it outright: a lot of the elements of this plot is pretty freaking predictable.
It's really tropey.
It's really tropey as well.
That's the movie's biggest problem, is that it's very, very tropey. Like,
you can say that's to the strength of the style. But
can you though? When The Incredibles 1, I mean, was The Incredibles 1 any less this style when it didn't rely on these tropes? I don't think so.
No.
So I don't think there was any real plus to the tropiness. It was just, I mean, we'll talk more about it, but most everything that happens in this movie is very tropey.
Yes.
It's very, oh yeah, this would happen here, and like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and oh haha, that's an old joke, like whatever. For the most part, not all of it.
Right. It's just it was a little disappointing how predictable it was. I mean, like Dave and I said, like, when Winston Dever was, in the trailers and stuff like that, we're just like, okay, clearly this is what's being set up here. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't think the Underminer was actually going to be the villain for the entire movie.
Well, I mean, even at the end of like the trailer, they teased like the screenslaver or whatever, right? Yeah. So, and he was like covered up in a mask. He's like, oh, gee, I wonder who's under that. Now, if you've seen the movie, you're already thinking like, oh, but that's not what happened. But what ends up happening isn't that much better.
Yeah.
They just did a good job in the trailers of like it was like this. It was definitely like a misdirect, right? Like we're gonna show this character, and we're gonna hide this other character, so you think that
exactly.
So like you can feel like we're surprising you, but really, if you just saw this movie, it would immediately become obvious what's going on because as he's like giving them his presentation or whatever, like out of nowhere, this disheveled woman like flies into the room, like looking like carrying whatever, like she didn't do her hair, whatever. It's like, oh, and here's my sister, Evelyn Devers, and you're like, oh hey. Hi, bad guy. Like she just straight up has like the Cruella de Vil look to her, and like she looks high all the time, and she's just clearly kind of disinterested in this whole thing. But like she's here, and you're like, I wonder why they would bother introducing you. Oh wait, it's because you're the bad guy, aren't you? And it doesn't take long to figure out that, yeah, that's exactly what's going on here.
And if you didn't get it just from her very not so subtle entrance and just her character design. So Winston is talking about like how he is such a huge fan of the classic supers, as well as his dad. His dad was a huge fan of the classic supers.
Yeah.
And like it did a lot of stuff for them and like, you know, made them very popular in the limelight. And he was so in with them that he had personal lines with two supers that we had only sort of heard about, Vironic and Gazerbeam.
Yeah.
He had two personal lines to them in case he ever needed trouble because he was like a rich mogul or whatever, and so stuff sort of happens. So they're talking about this story about how his parents died though because there were these armed robbers that broke into their complex, and instead of going down to like the safe room in the basement, the safe panic room, he instead went down to the lines. But these robbers cut all the phone lines.
What it was right after. It was right after they put him underground.
You're right.
And so they had abandoned the phones or whatever. They'd abandoned the super life. So when he called, there was no one there.
You're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But he was still down there trying to get them on the line, and he got caught, and they were shot and killed.
Well, it was kind of left vague whether or not their mom like went down to the safe room and survived.
But you never hear about it.
You never hear about her.
She
doesn't matter, but whatever.
During this whole time, Evelyn is all like, if they had just went down to the safe room, everything would have been all right. And Winston's like, I disagree. But that's another story for another
like,
time.
oh, gee, this person doesn't seem to like supers. I'm sure that'll never be important later.
I believe Dave and I exchanged a look during that scene also. Like, what I do love is how our wives sort of like situated their seating to where Dave and I sat next to each other.
They knew.
Oh,
gosh.
And I do believe we exchanged a look at that point. We're just sort of like,
Yeah. And this was actually pointed out to me on Twitter by an old friend who put it on there. But if you didn't get it by either of those things, her name is actually a pun on Evil Endeavors because her name is Evelyn Devers, which is just... in case you wanted them to shove it just a little harder down your throat.
I mean, I don't...
It's a bad pun.
It's a very...
It's like they want you to know ahead of time.
It's so bad that I almost don't think it's actually intentional because it's just
it
that
has
bad.
To be intentional. It was 100% intentional.
It's one of the worst things I've ever seen Pixar do, though. If that's intentional,
it's not that bad. Come on,
Evelyn Devers.
Whatever.
She's hello. My name is Evelyn Devers. Okay, so that was their absolutely shoehorned in backstory.
Yeah,
so it came out of nowhere. So then, anyways, they discussed their plan, and what they're gonna do is basically use their technology and use their
connections in like media and like. Advertising and stuff like that to basically put a better spin on the superheroes because they're like, why does no one like this stuff? I forget what Mr. Incredible says, but it's like it's pretty funny. I'm sad I can't remember the joke here. But anyway, he gives some like very Mr. Incredible answer, and he's like, no, it's actually perception. Because like people see all the damage you cause, but they don't see all the hard decisions you have to make. So we're going to have this fancy tiny little camera, which they'd put on like all their lanyards or whatever, just so it worked, I guess. So that people can see exactly like what you do and how heroic you are or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mr. Incredible's like, sweet, sign me up, baby.
But then they're like actually, Elastigirl is going to be the first one. She's like, what are you talking about? And they were like, well, we crunched the numbers, and basically Elastigirl causes the least amount of property damage and collateral damage.
Mr. Incredible's like, well, I mean, I'm not that bad. Am I? Like, no, you're great, buddy. It's just, the numbers.
So this presents like a slight other trope, which I'm very glad they focused on very little.
Yeah.
Because it was going to get obnoxious if it wasn't. So basically they have to think about it, and they have a scene where they're like, sort of talking about it, and
they're like in bed talking about it. And this scene dragged a little bit, in my opinion. Very minor.
I actually liked the scene.
I wouldn't say I disliked it. I just think it dragged a little bit. That's
I can see what you mean though. Just because this was one of those scenes where Pixar did it again, where I totally forgot that I was watching an animated movie, because their movements were so realistic, their acting was so compelling and realistic also. Anyway, so what they're discussing here is like, because Mr. Incredible has a pretty big ego. He not only misses being a super, but he also misses being in the limelight and like, being like a known hero to people and everything like that. And so he kind of has to, just put his ego in check and just allow, Elastigirl be the star.
Yeah, like he's trying to like really support her because he does want them and their kids to like have this choice, and he knows that if she's the best play, like she needs to go and do that. But she's like, I don't know, like what about the kids? Like what about taking care of the kids? He's like, no, I'll be fine. I can take care of them. And she's like, I don't know that you will. And he's like, come on, baby. Like, you need to do this. And yeah.
So they get moved into one of Winston Dever's like massive mansions.
She eventually accepts, basically.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
They move into the massive mansion. And then, so she gets called to like her first little mission on this cool little like bike, and there is a small
motorcycle.
There's a small little point also where they made a suit for her from this like other like super costume designer that's not Edna Mode, and Mr. Incredible makes a quip of something like, "Oh, geez, better you than me. I don't want to hear what she has to say about this." So she goes off on like this cool little cycle, and like there's some people like on the freeway like recognizing her and being all like,
I don't know how they're like teenagers. I'm like, this is before your time. Kid. Like I don't get it, but yeah.
Okay, so here's where it begins. Again, another spot that I'm glad they didn't focus on for too long, because the Mr. Mom tropes do happen in this movie, but it is not a singular. It is not the driving plot point of this movie.
All of the real Mr. Mom jokes you saw in the trailers.
Yes.
Right? Like it doesn't linger on it beyond that. And it does make it a little tired just because if you've seen all the trailers, like that's really all there is to it. But I'm much better that than they like tried to focus on it for longer, right? Like there's some things you didn't see in the trailers, like Ragged Mr. Incredible trying to put Jack to bed or whatever. Like a couple of those things you don't see, but like you get it, right? Like it's the same type of stuff, but they don't linger on it for too long before it turns into a real point of character development for him, which is really nice.
There's basically a moment where, there's a slight montagey sort of scene where he's trying to be the Mr. Mom and failing at everything, of course.
Yeah, like basically like the first part is everything's going wrong. Like Dash doesn't know how to do the math homework, and Jack's crying and won't go to sleep, and Violet is, upset because like she has her date with Tony Ridinger, but then he doesn't show up because turns out in the very beginning of the movie, you saw that he had his mind wiped of the fact that Violet was one of the superheroes. But oops, turned out they erased all of her from his memory because it's not an exact science, Bob, as he tries to explain to him later. But so she's all busted up. Mr. Incredible is just like really worried about her and just like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, she's like, oh, I'm fine. I don't want to talk. And he doesn't know what to do because he's a parent. And he's just like, okay.
So there's this beautiful scene that happens with no dialogue or barely even any like inner monologue or anything like that too, where he's just like, he's up late at night at like 2 because Jack kept him up.
Well, some others because the stuff with Elastigirl happened before this. Should we go talk about that?
No, not yet.
Well, because that's sort of what sets us into motion is he sees that on the TV and he's like really upset.
All right, fine.
Like
I just wanted to get over his stuff first. Anyways.
No, I know, but it's interspersed and it does have to do because like they interplay it really well with it's juxtaposed against his like jealousy for what his wife is getting to do, right? And so at first you're just like, man, just get over it, Bob. Like you're being really selfish, you're just being jealous, but it like juxtaposes it in such a way where you're like, oh, okay, I get how this is part of your character now and how it's not coming from a bad place, and you get to see how he like uses it to like spur him forward. So I think it's important.
So what happens is she goes into this town. It's not, what's it like, Metroville is like
it's a really like name.
So now it's like New Urban
New
or
Donk
something.
City. I don't know.
Basically she just sort of like hides out someplace, and she has a comm with both the Devers, and they have like a police scanner open, just seeing like what's going on. And then they hear that there might be something going down at the new unveiling of like a bullet train.
Yeah.
So she's all like, okay, I'm on my way. And so she's just like waiting for a while. The mayor is there, and they christen the new bullet train, and so they're going to take the inaugural ride. Then she's like, okay, nothing's wrong here yet. And then the bullet train decides to go in the opposite direction, and very little bit like fast too.
It goes the wrong direction very fast. And she's like, how much of this line is complete? And they're like, not that way.
So she's rushing. There's a really, okay, so I guess we didn't get to see, no, we kind of did, but we didn't see like, okay, so Elastigirl is stretchy. She can make a parachute, and she can stretch very far. That's kind of all we knew, like, from the first movie.
The way that she uses her bike is, like, right in between being really cheesy and really cool.
I just thought it was really cool.
It's weird. At first, I was like, when I first saw her do it, like, on the freeway or whatever, I was like, oh, that's kind of dumb. But then when I saw it in action here, like, this is what sucked me in, and I was just like, superhero movies are fun. Like, it's just fun getting them to see them do this. Like, that was the one where I'm like, all right, I'm having fun with this movie. Like, I am liking this movie. And like, that was the point where I'm like, okay, like, you got me. Like, don't drop it from here, but like, you got me here.
So her bike splits in half, and she's able to use that to sort of slingshot herself, and to also like
dodge stuff
and like loop around like other things to like boost her around and stuff like that. So there's a nice action sequence here, obviously. So she gets into the train and she runs over to the conductor because she can't, like, she tried like in front of the window.
There's a big old chase sequence where eventually the bike blows up because they go under tunnels or whatever. But eventually she gets on it and she tries to get the driver's attention.
And the driver is just like a dead glare like in front of like this screen, and that's
like flashing and stuff.
So then she like breaks it, but like,
well, she like breaks into the back part of the thing to like try to she catches up to it and she tries to get his attention to get him to turn the other way, but he's just like completely out of it or whatever, just zonked. And so she has to break into the train and like split it apart somehow and like slow it down with her giant parachutiness, and she does it.
She does stop it. It's a little similar to the first movie.
It's actually very, how about that? They both just have to stop a train, right?
And also a little similar to Spider-Man 2.
Where like the other end of it just sort of barely goes off the edge, and then something bumps it and just goes a little bit more like, oh no! You're like,
so then the train is saved. She runs back to the conductor room and just sort of like, what is your problem? She looks at the screen and it says something like, welcome back, Elastigirl, from the screenslaver, or something like that. And you're just like, ooh, what is happening here? So she makes a lot of big news because of it, because she saved the mayor and she saved, everybody there, no casualties and yada yada.
Yeah.
And
so she like calls Mr. Incredible and is like, hey, guess what I did? She's like, I stopped a train. And he's like, oh, good for you.
Oh yeah, he turns on the news at the same time too, to like see it happening. See it on
every channel, and he's like, that's great, honey. You're doing such a good job. And so that is kind of what like, so he goes.
That's part of the reason why he's up so late. Like, he's up really late, Jack also. Yeah. And he's tossing and turning. And again, no dialogue or no like even like inner monologue happening here.
He mumbles a few things to himself that I feel like is kind of important, but I don't remember exactly what it is.
And a lot of it is like comedic though. He's all like, learn math and basically what's happening here, I mean, like, if he were to speak, he would be saying things like, I'm Mr. Incredible, and that means I have to be incredible at everything, which means my kids need Mr. Incredible right now, and so that's what I'm going to be. And so he stood up really late,
stays up all night learning
Dash's math, and like actually helping him on the test and stuff. He calls Dicker also, and just sort of like, so do you remember that guy? Yeah, I do. Nice kid. You kind of erased Violet from his memory. Oh,
oops.
Oops.
It happens sometimes. It's just like
so he tries to do the right thing, and like he takes out the family to like the restaurant that he works
the restaurant that his like parents own that he works at.
Of course, Violet doesn't know what's going on like until
none of them are like, why are we going to this like podunk diner?
And then happens to see him being like serving their table and shoots water out of her nose. I mean, like the scene itself,
the most cartoony. Yeah,
the scene itself doesn't sound all that entertaining when you say it out loud. But
no,
Dave knows. I was
dying.
I was taken aback because I did not know that was what was going to happen.
I mean, the timing is great. It's all classical, like slapstick cartoony stuff, right? But it's done really well. And I commented because like as soon as the moment happened where she like shoots the water, because it's not like a little bit of water, like they do. They are intentional about making it look like a faucet, like, and so everyone's like, "Oh, gee, I'll clean that up." And so, like, as there's that like weird motion, like on the TV, where like nothing's really happening, but all the characters are like, "Oh, gee, oh, blah, 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 blah." Everyone in the theater is busting up laughing, right? And it just like dawned on me, like, that is good filmmaking right there, where you have that joke and then you like insert this period where nothing important is happening. It's just filler, yeah. It's completely filler, but it's just so people can laugh and recover just in time to get the rest of the movie. I was like, that's really that's slick. I like that.
I mean, that's how you pace a movie, really. Yeah. That's exactly how you pace a movie. So yeah.
Mr. Incredible makes some like great water jokes. Like, this water is just divine. Where do you get this from? I think it's the tap water. Well, it is just delicious.
Oh my goodness. It's a
great moment. Yeah.
And there's also some things like with Jack happening too, to the point where he calls Frozone over to like.
Well, I feel like we should talk about the raccoon scene too.
So okay.
So at one point he's like staying up super late, and Jack is just not going to bed, and like somehow Jack keeps getting downstairs in front of the TV, even after Mr. Incredible puts like a table on top of the crib, and instead of questioning that, he's just like, whatever, just I guess we're watching TV. So he falls asleep watching TV while Jack's watching it too. And there's like an old timey like cops and robbers thing on where
with like the robbers wearing like a black mask on his eyes and stuff.
And Jack looks outside and there's a raccoon digging through their trash. And so he immediately identifies this as the robber. And it is a fantastic scene.
So he like materializes through their windows. And has this really hilarious fight scene with this raccoon. And like all the while he's like polymorphing into like many of like the different powers he has. Like there's a scene where like he like turns into Human Torch and is like lighting things on fire. And the raccoon's like, what is happening? What are you? And like all these other things. The raccoon's not backing down though. It's hilarious. The whole time I think Mr. Incredible's on the phone the whole time, so he's not noticing right away.
I think he's asleep.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's like asleep in front of the TV, so it takes a while before he wakes up. He like looks outside and Jack's shooting lasers or whatever, and he's just like, ah!
So he doesn't notice all of Jack's powers, but he does see, he's like, you have powers. And then like Jack like sneezes or like coughs or something and like unleashes like 4 of them all within like the span of like 1 second.
It's the exact scene you saw in the trailers where he's like, yeah, baby. And he like does all those same powers, except the laser beam doesn't take the chunk out of his hair like in the trailer.
Thank goodness.
Which I thought was nice for 2 reasons. Because 1, it just would have made it awkward and it wasn't that funny to begin with. But 2, it was a nice return to the Pixar fake out.
Yes.
Of having that in the trailer and actually not having it in the movie.
Yes.
It was minor, but I loved it. I was like, feels like old Pixar.
So then he calls Frozone over and is just like,
I need help.
and yeah, Jack is like demonstrating some of his powers, like interdimensional like travel also.
And Lucius is doing exactly what he does, just freaking out like, what? Your baby has powers, and doing all that.
Let me just say,
like,
Samuel L. Jackson has way more lines in this movie, and thank the Lord he did.
The movie is better off.
Oh my goodness, it totally is. His character just overall has a bigger impact too, which I really loved.
Yes.
Because it's like he didn't really have that much impact in the first movie. He was there.
No.
And he was funny. He was Samuel L. Jackson. But here he actually like makes a difference, and I really liked it. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Incredible finally decides he has enough, and so he just needs to drop him off at Edna Mode's to like maybe find a way to like control his powers and whatnot.
Or something.
Edna is at first incredibly offended that Elastigirl is not wearing one of her suits.
But upon seeing how disheveled and disgusting Mr. Incredible looks, she caves and lets him in.
So she's all like, I'm not a babysitter, I'm an artist, Bob, yada yada. And is just like looking at Jack like as she's like ranting, and Jack just like turns into Edna.
Yeah, it's just like grows hair, like changes his head shape, grows her nose.
And she's just like, oh my God. And then so she completely flips over and like says, like agrees to take him and yada yada, shoves Bob out the door because she wants to get started right away.
Yeah.
And that's hilarious. He comes back home and like Violet is still like really, she's, sad. And like Bob just sort of lays it all on the line and just like, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know that, all his memory was going to get erased and yada, yada. Like, and just has a really nice heart to heart with.
And this is where he kind of says the stuff that we mentioned earlier, where he's like, I'm Mr. Incredible. Like, I need to be incredible at everything. And it's just hard being like mediocre. And so I've worked really hard to try to be a good dad, but I'm sorry, I'm not a good dad. And
yeah.
She's like, you're a great dad. And there's a nice little moment. It's nice. It's very tropey, but it's nice. It's fine. Yeah. And it does reveal more of his character where it's like, okay, this character now makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right? He's not just being a selfish jerk. He like has this kind of, I don't know if I want to say inferiority complex, but he just has this need to be great, right?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder like what his dad was like, actually. But anyway, that's cool. That's the kind of character development that you love to see and that this movie deserved. And
yes, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tropey,
absolutely.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that I still didn't enjoy it.
But even like his actions were tropey and the moments were tropey, but at least his character, I mean, it probably is tropey, but it felt very genuine. And that's really all that matters. So yeah, that helped a lot.
So going back to Elastigirl, so her reemergence has caught like the attention of like this ambassador that like happened to be visiting and was like talking to her like before this like big on TV interview that she was gonna have with this like TV host.
Yeah, this ambassador from some country who's like all about supers. It's like, I want to bring the supers back, blah blah blah. And you're like, oh great, whatever.
So she gets escorted out onto like these private helicopters or whatever. And so Elastigirl's going to have her interview with this TV anchor. But then the screens start flickering and whatnot, and his teleprompter starts flickering, and he starts talking like in place of the screenslaver.
Yeah.
And is like saying like, it'll be ashamed if something happened to like a helicopter or something like that,
Yeah.
So she deduces that's what's going on. She runs over to like the editing room and like they're all hypnotized as well. So she has no choice but to go after it herself and like chase after these like 3 helicopters. One of them might have the ambassador in there.
I want to pause at this point really quickly just to say, like, this is sort of an unfortunate side note that I have to note. And my wife was the one who pointed it out to me afterwards, and I was like, yeah, that kind of really sucks. If you have epilepsy, don't see this movie. Like, you actually can't see this movie. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
there are a lot of flashing images.
And my wife was telling me as I was talking to her yesterday, she's like, yeah, I was looking it up. Like, that was her immediate thought after seeing that. She's like, I don't think people with epilepsy can see this movie. I'm like, they had to have tested that, right? I'm like, but like, what are they going to do? Stick people with epilepsy in a room and like show them this? Like, they can't do that. So I don't know. But she was telling me afterwards, she's like, yeah, apparently like people have had like seizures in the movie theater because of this. And apparently Disney's like, yeah, the theaters were supposed to post outside that if you have epilepsy, don't see this movie. And so they're kind of like, yeah, this is what you're supposed to do. So I'm just like, it really kind of sucks, and it's unfortunate because like in order to show like the the hypnotizing lights or whatever, to make it more genuine, it's like a lot. It's like all the classic like black and white like swirly things, but it's not like a perfect circle like the stereotypical one is. It's a lot of stuff, but it's always flashing like really really quickly. And so she immediately, because like Nicole, if you're listening, Nicole, her mom has epilepsy, and so that was the first person she thought of. Was like, we should like. Maybe we should tell Nicole like not to take her mom to see this movie. Like,
I saw no warnings at all.
No, there were no warnings in the before the movie.
Yeah,
certainly nothing you saw
not
there.
by the theater, not by like the pre.
No,
nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
it does suck. And if you're gonna talk about a minus for the movie, like that's kind of a big deal to make your movie like inaccessible to a certain portion of like people. But
they should have learned from the Porygon episode.
They really should have. You joke, but they really should have.
This ain't the first time stuff like this has happened in animation either. So no. I don't know why that slipped by their radar, or they thought like, just put a warning label.
I get it. Where like in order to make because like the whole hypnotism thing is like. It's very spooky and it's very eerie and it is very weird in like the, as they go through this process of chasing the screenslaver, it becomes like, yeah, I control all the screens. Like if you look at any screen, you're like in danger of being hypnotized by me at any time. And it's a good way of making it spooky and really like, you just feel icky, because hypnotism is one of those things, like in the original, in Batman Begins of the trilogy, like anything that's like mind altering and stuff, like just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like, so Scarecrow is really like this movie's really good, and it's certainly doing a good job making it feel uncomfortable, but it's almost like too much so. The Incredibles 2 doesn't quite stray that far, but it's just really eerie to think about losing control over your own mind like that, right? And so I get why they made it like all flashy like this, because to make it seem more genuine, because obviously we know like you can't just look at a spinning circle and like, be hypnotized or whatever. So they're trying to make it seem like, oh, something with the flashing lights messes with your brains. But unfortunately, they did not take into account flashing lights actually messing with people's brains.
It seems like such a pretty egregious oversight for such a monster house like Disney.
Yeah. It's not becoming, but anyway.
Well,
she saves her from the helicopters.
Yeah. Basically what happens is she goes into a helicopter, smashes the screen right away just in case, and is all like, we got to follow the helicopter with the ambassador in it. And then so she eventually gets in there, also smashes that screen just in case. But the other helicopter is still out there and gets hypnotized and starts going after them.
Yeah.
She and destroys their helicopter, but like is able to just like save everybody on the helicopter, including the ambassador. So they're celebrating.
I don't know if she saved everybody. Now that I'm thinking about it, she saved the ambassador.
Well, saved everybody.
Sure if anybody else made it.
No, because she shoved them out. She's like, can you guys swim? Yeah.
And the ambassador's like, no. And you're like, well, you're gonna learn.
So they're celebrating at DevTech, but she's like, but Screenslaver is still out there. Like, I saved the ambassador, great, but the thing is still out there. But Winston is trying to like get her to just like, at least be happy with what's happening right here. Not to mention, her exploits have actually gotten a lot of supers out of hiding, and like they're all gathered over at DevTech, and so we get to meet a lot of new supers that we never heard of, even from the first movie.
Yeah, just some new guys,
new whatevers.
That's
not the high point of the movie, but it's like fine.
They're neat. Yeah. Whatever. The only one who really gets any character development is Void.
Character development.
I mean, she's like,
I say screen time, not character development.
Well, enough time to actually understand what her character is, where she's like this teenager kind of. She's obviously younger, and she's just like enthralled with like Elastigirl, just like, oh, you're my hero, and like girl power, and yeah, like she just really wants to impress her and whatever. So the other characters are just kind of there.
Whatever. Void does have portal powers.
Yeah, she's just straight up Portal, the video game. So that's neat.
Then comes a scene where Elastigirl and Evelyn are talking. My wife would be remiss if I didn't mention how she thought this was pretty pandering, and just like Evelyn in general was pretty pandering. Like there's a spot where like she's about to go on like the TV interview, and Evelyn is all like, oh, it was so much better that it's you and not Mr. Incredible, huh? Something like that. My wife is pretty privy and sensitive to like, the way women is portrayed
girl
in media
power,
and stuff
feminism,
like that. Yeah. But like she thought that was straight up pandering.
Right.
She wanted me to say that on the cast though. She's like, are you going to mention something like that? I was like, I don't know if I really have the credit to say that. She's like, just say that I said it. I was like, okay, all right.
Yes, honey.
Yes, honey. So that kind of is what's happening right there a little bit.
It's weird because Evelyn kind of has two weird things going in her character. One is like the straight up girl power, where like she's kind of talking in this scene. She's talking to Mrs. Incredible, and she's like, "Yeah."
Well, it's also important to note about Evelyn that she is actually making all the tech.
Yeah, she makes all the techs that are the tech that her brother sells, right? And so they're sort of talking about like the merits of who's more important, the salesman or the person who makes it. And Mrs. Incredible kind of presents both sides in a really intelligent and interesting way because she's a great character, and it's done really well. But you're like, Evelyn's just because she has this like girl power thing going on, but it never really goes anywhere.
Yeah,
it's just kind of there, but ultimately that's not her like big deal. Like ultimately, what you find out, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for later, but I'll just mention it here. Ultimately, her big thing is like people are lazy and they trust other people for no reason, right? They like trust other people to take care of their problems when they need to be doing it all themselves and blah, blah, blah. So that like becomes her thing. But early on, it seems like she's like the girl power thing. So you wonder if it's going to be a thing where like she tries to go after Mr. Incredible, but like tries to team up with Mrs. Incredible. Mrs. Incredible's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But like that doesn't happen. But it's just like, it's a little inconsistent, right? It's a little bit of a thread that doesn't really go anywhere. It's almost like they're sort of trying to hint at the danger of like this extreme feminism, but like they never actually go there. It's a little weird. And like that's the other thing I would say really falls in the negative of this movie, aside from the tropiness, is there are just a few threads here and there that kind of are picked up and then never go anywhere. They're usually very minor and not like a huge deal, but there's some of them and they'll nag at you a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but it is noticeable. So
it's like, you know, in the first movie during like the TV interview scenes, and she's like, you know, like, come on, girls, come on, leave the saving the world to the men. I don't think so. Yeah. You know, that didn't really go anywhere either, but maybe that's a little more period-y. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I will have to, yeah.
So anyways, they're talking about all this, and then Elastigirl gets the idea that, like, you know, if Screenslaver is using TV, then that means that, you know, can you make a signal tracer? And we'll trace them out in that way. And so she was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So they devised this plan where she's having an over the phone interview with the person she was supposed to have the TV interview with. And of course, as she does it, Screenslaver interrupts. And so she's outside of the TV studio while she's doing this. And so she's tracing the signal the whole way through.
And this is where Screenslaver gets his sort of monologue underneath her chasing him down, where she's like, you trust screens to do this and this, no real interaction, no blah, blah, blah. And so this is where it's weird, and we'll get to this later, but you're not really sure if this is exactly what Evelyn's deal is, or if it's sort of just part of it's just kind of made up, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, it seems to be what her actual issue. It seems to be her evil monologue, although she gets another one later.
Yeah,
but
it was also maybe a reflection on today's society.
Probably, but at least it wasn't quite as obnoxious as like WALL-E.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Or it was done better than, I mean, it was, I guess, subtler-ish than Zootopia, because it wasn't as major of a like a thing of the entire movie. But yeah, this was their moment to like get their, you know, propaganda, not propaganda, but you know, their agenda. Stuff out, their agenda out there. You can say that's agenda, that's the right word. Yeah.
So she traces a signal to this like apartment building. She like sneaks inside. This part's actually creepy because
it's pretty tense. Yeah. Because you know at any moment
something's gonna pop out.
Yes.
And it takes a while for that to happen. She's going through and she's in Screenslaver's workshop. Yada yada. And then of course he pops out into this like big hypnotism room.
Yeah, where like all the walls are like showing his like crazy hypnotism.
And this is definitely the apex of like the seizure inducing
There's
scenes.
No way someone has a seizure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no way.
And it's meant to be very disorienting to you if you don't have these issues.
And very tense.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. It is. It's a big fist fight and stuff like that.
Where she can't open her eyes.
He has this like cattle proddy type like weapon too, and is like hurting her also. And
I guess she's not like Monkey D. Luffy, where her body is like actually rubber and it doesn't do anything to her. It's electric.
Sure.
Sorry.
She's elastic. Manga. Elastic isn't.
But it's like rubber. I don't know, whatever.
Anyway, so
now we know her power isn't actually her body being made out of rubber.
No.
Confirmed.
Shit, otherwise she'd be a rubber girl.
Okay.
Duh. Okay. Her body's made out of elastic.
I don't
like waistbands.
I feel like I don't know how much those would be affected by electricity either. Whatever. Certainly, if she was wearing her rubber suit from Edna, this wouldn't be a problem.
No, absolutely.
So, well.
I mean, you know, she's the best.
Anyway,
so they're on the run. He like rigs a bomb into the apartment building too, but she eventually
gets out of the room, and there's a chase scene out of the building where he like sets a bomb off without her noticing, and
she catches him and takes off the mask. But the guy is like, what's going on here? I'm like, gotcha, Screenslaver. What do you? I'm just a pizza delivery man. What's going on?
Yeah.
And so again, they have a big like happy bash at DevTech with all the supers again and stuff like that. But the whole time she's just sort of like, something's really not right. And so she like goes by herself to like this video editing room and is like reviewing the footage that was on her suit.
Camera, right?
Yeah. And like, I mean, I don't know the exact
she like
evidence.
Starts to put it together where she's like, this doesn't, at first it's like kind of weird. She's like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is all the power he has and this is all he was doing with it. And it's like, And so Evelyn is in there like talking her through it, and she's like, I don't know, maybe he wasn't that smart. And she's like, no, he's clearly a genius. Like if he put the stuff together, like that doesn't make any sense. And I forget what other like weird evidence she like brings up.
But basically she figures it out, and as she does, Evelyn puts on hypno glasses.
Yeah, so like what happens is like she sees in the background of like the image of her fight with her, she sees the exact same image that she's looking at in a TV behind the screensaver. And she's like, how would he have this like how would he have this feed? Like, this is secure, right? And the girl's like, yeah, it's super secure, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, maybe he hacked it. And she's like, that doesn't make sense. And first of all, why is that in his room? Why is there a TV showing that feed in his room? Because he's just responding to what Evelyn is telling him to do through the hypnotism. So why does he need to see it? Whatever. And so she reaches... what's his name? The brother gave her the mask and it's like, oh, memento or whatever. And so she reaches into it and pulls out these weird like goggle things. And she's like, oh my gosh, like what if he was sending it through this and like the real person, bad guy is out there and like controlling her. And somehow Evelyn gets in her hand and just smacks him right on her face. And oops, she's hypnotized now.
So then she puts her in this like room that's like Sub-Zero.
This was the least necessary scene in this whole movie. First of all, why do you have that room? That room literally exists for the express purpose of doing nothing but explaining your evil plot. Like maybe, that's all.
Maybe it was a meat freezer.
She brings a meat freezer. She brings her out of the hypnosis in this giant Sub-Zero room
to monologue.
So that if Mrs. Incredible stretches, she'll snap or something like that. And just monologues. Just does her monologue thing. And like the thing is, the whole time I was like, all right, Mrs. Incredible, you can close your eyes now. You can close your eyes anytime now.
Yeah.
And she doesn't, and her eyes are wide open when she turns the device back on, and oh, she's hypnotized again. I'm like, you know.
That part bothered me too.
That scene was really dumb.
I will say also.
But they like needed it for her to get her like evil, don't trust anybody, and I want the supers not to be here because then people will trust supers to fix all their problems, and look how that got my dad, and like, no, people need to learn the supers are the enemy, so I'm going to use you to like bust a bunch of stuff, and it's going to be great.
Again, it's tropey. It's very tropey that this scene was in there. Tropey. I will say that as a slight side note, this movie did a good job of never really calling back to the first movie.
Yeah.
Like no jokes were really repeated.
No
like,
cape jokes.
Yeah, exactly. No cape jokes.
Yeah.
No references to Syndrome.
No.
None of that.
Except for like, I think they say his name once, or like Syndrome blew up our house.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't even remember. Yeah.
But like nobody even like said like oh, I'm monologuing yada yada in this scene. That would have been welcomed.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't there, and that's still okay.
You know what joke? Sorry, this is really. You know what joke I had hoped would come back? I really wanted like in the final scene, like on the boat or whatever the final scene wound up being. I really wanted Lucius's wife to show up, and I really wanted her to be like a super mega ultra lightning babe. I thought that would have been great.
That's fine with me. I'm good.
I'm good. I thought that would have been hilarious that she was a super the whole time, but just like didn't want him going out.
That is a joke that did return, but they did not linger on it at all.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool.
Because when he like goes to like help the babies or whatever.
Okay,
like,
so let's talk about this now.
Okay.
So all right, so moving forward, I guess in the story.
Yeah.
So Evelyn calls Mr. Incredible, and like
which
says,
has
like,
the direct line is apparently there. That was a little weird.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's whatever.
Anyway. And before this, Jack is returned back from Edna. They have like a whole demonstration, and basically he finds out that like all babies, even and when they're supers, tend to have like a flurry of powers, which is supposed to be a callback to how babies tend to understand most, if not all, languages. Like there's been do you know about that? There's like there's been studies made where like from like ages like 0 months to like maybe 6 months, they seem to have the same cognitive ability for any language spoken to them.
That makes sense.
But then
where
like,
it's not like a real understanding, but they understand enough of it.
Yeah, and then like beyond 6 months,
sense.
their brain sorts to determine what's the primary one, and then just sort of latches onto that. So it works sort of the same way for supers, where like they seem to have like a flurry of powers, but then they'll like latch onto like maybe one of them or something like that. But Jack is a polymorph, so he's special. He tends to just like have all these different powers in total. So Edna makes like a suit and like a control tablet to like help out with like all these sorts of things. Like
she sort of explains to Bob, like, here's how you can get him out of like subspace or whatever when he gets there. Like, here's how you like don't give him cookies and take him away because then you activate Demon Baby, and
if that happens, then you like
combustion imminent.
Yeah,
and that's in the joke, and then they've got like a in like a fire extinguisher inside the suit that shoots out edible lavender blueberry fluff or something. It was kind of funny.
It's cute, yeah. And cute. There's also like a tracker, like if he goes interdimensional, like they can find him and play hide and seek or whatever, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So like Bob is like demonstrating this with all the kids too, and yada yada. Then they get the call that Elastigirl's in trouble. So he's all like, "Oh, I need to go." And then he calls Frozone to like help watch over the kids too.
Yeah, it's not clear if he had a feeling that someone might be coming after the kids, or if he was just like, they're gonna need help with Jack.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, that's what the joke's like. I'm going to help such and such. I'll be back. It's like, I need to go ASAP. She's like, you better be back ASAP or whatever.
So Mr. Incredible goes and finds, like says like Elastigirl is like in here.
And she's acting strange.
And beats the crap out of him.
He's like, what's happening
like, what's going on? What's going on? And subdues him enough to put glasses onto him. So now he's hypnotized.
Yeah, great.
Back at the home, all those previous supers that were just introduced come to the kid's door with glasses on.
And the kids are like, hello,
who are you? And then Lucius comes in and is tries to act all cool. Like, oh yeah, Winston sent me. He told me I got this covered. You guys can just,
you guys can
leave.
Yeah.
And so he goes in and, but then all the supers like break through the house, and Lucius, again, like, I always thought like his powers in the first movie were sort of like, he makes ice.
Yeah.
But and like, oh, he can skate on the ice, but Jack is way faster. Mm-hmm. Oh, he can stop like robots with his ice walls. Yeah, he can stop robots with his ice walls.
But Mr. Incredible can just
punch the thing out of there.
He was just like, I'm gonna throw some ice in front of something, and it's it's not gonna stop it, but it'll slow him down for like the other characters. And that's even like in the Underminer. He just kind of sprays snow at the thing, so it doesn't do quite as much damage to the big building. And
but in this movie, he's pretty awesome. Man. Yeah, he is really awesome, and he stops them just enough, but then he eventually gets the goggles on him too.
I guess we should mention that there's like a subplot at some point of like Mr. Incredible like browsing TV, and he sees that some like rich eccentric hipster billionaire has bought his Incredicar, and he was like, they told me it was destroyed, that it was lost forever. And on TV he's like, and it's definitely not destroyed or lost forever. And he's like, I still have the remote for it right here. And he's like tempted to like he pushes a button and like all the stuff starts up right after saying, yeah, we don't know how to get all this stuff to work. And they're like, oh my gosh, and Dash is like, well, what else can it do? And he's like, well, there's this rocket launcher. She's like, fire the rocket launcher. He's like, I'm not gonna fire the rocket launcher at this guy's house. And Dash's like, but it's your car. And he's like, and so he like eventually just puts it down.
It was great because he knew that if he had done that, he would have put Limelight onto him, and that would have disrupted the plan. He was all like, no, this has to be Helen's thing. You know?
So Dash has the bright idea during this to get the Incredicar to come to them. Like, he hits the
Incredimobile.
I thought it was the Incredicar.
That sounds really dumb.
I thought it sounded really dumb in the theater too. I'm pretty sure it's Incredicar.
Oh, let's look this up later.
Okay. But anyway, so it gets to the house like right when things look really bad, and Lucian's like, what? The Incredicar? And they're like, yeah, I pushed a button. And he's like, oh, Incredicar, do this. And it is the Incredimobile. Okay, fair enough. I thought they said, I don't feel like they said, I feel like when he was talking, Incredimobile would have been too long. I feel like he refers to it as the
Incredicar. Sounds too much like Incredicard.
I don't know, man.
Like the worst, like credit union. Like
I'll need to see it again. But I thought I feel like, because he says it a lot, because he's like, Incredimobile, do such and such, and then he's like, all right, now like everybody get in, and he tells the car to like identify the next few voices as like voice commands it'll understand, because he's able to command it because of the time he was with Mr. Incredible back in the day, where he had like privilege to do that. And so they put their names in, and like right as they like get authorized to use the car, Lucius gets glasses, and they're like, Incredimobile escape, and so it like drives off into the night or whatever, and they're like, well, what the frick do we do now? Like,
so long story
have
short,
their little dialogue.
Long story short, they decide like we can't just like not do anything. So the plan is, they still have the ambassador with them, and what they're gonna do is they're gonna sign.
The bad guys do.
Yes. They're gonna sign into effect, like, what's it called? Like,
I don't know, the superhero relegalization.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know, who cares?
For some reason, they're going to put them all on this like super yacht and like have a party out at sea, including the ambassador and yada yada, and televise the signing live. So that it's all there. Of course, Evelyn's plan is to have all the supers all into one place at the same time, yada yada.
Yeah, her plan is to like show like she's like hiding the three supers from him while her brother's making all the prep, and he's like, where are they? And she's like, oh, they're prepping or whatever. And so her plan is to have them all come in with their goggles on, hypnotize the whole room, and then have, the supers make some speech about like, you will never like put us underground again, and we're gonna blow up your city, and like, this is our world now type thing. And so that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, all the while, Violet, Dash, and Jack have like infiltrated and like trying to get through, and are like actually fighting through some of the other hypnotized supers already, which is kind of cool.
It is fun.
Violet has a cool fight scene with Void.
Yeah.
Doesn't take off her glasses, but like she subdues her.
And then just leaves her on the ground.
Yeah, so like, okay, so she's coming back. The details here are a little bit fuzzy.
They wind up in like an air vent, and Jack breaks his control thing and gets huge, and so like falls down there. Oh, because Jack really wants to find Mom, and they're like, no, we have to like wait and like figure this out. But eventually Jack gets away from him because he's Jack and finds Mom, who's like hypnotized, and they're like, what is this baby? Like, I don't understand. And it's like right at that moment, like Dash and Violet go in the room and they see like their parents hypnotized, but like Jack gets the goggles off, and Evelyn's like, no, stop them, like through the thing, but they don't, and they all get their glasses off.
Yeah.
But before that had happened, she had sent like the three of them, Frozone, Mr. Incredible, Mrs. Incredible, into like the control room to like take over, and like left just enough time for the like captain to be like, mayday, mayday, the supers are taking over. And then they cut out all communication, put it on a direct course aiming towards the city, and break all the controls.
Yeah.
And so they get in there and like, oh, what? So when they wake up, they're like, oh, what happened? They're like, we seem to be heading right for that city. Maybe we should do something about that. And then the other supers come in, and there's another cool fight scene with them, and yeah.
Yeah.
But they get all their glasses off, and it's it's fine.
Yeah. So then Evelyn, well, the plan is for Frozone to sort of like try to like break off some of the side rudders or whatever, so that the boat will start to turn. And Mr. Incredible is going to go underneath the boat and move the rudder himself.
Yeah. Eventually they land on that. First they try to like get to the boiler room to like try to like cut the engine or something, but one of the supers named Crush cuts off Mr. Incredible's like path, and he knocks him out and takes the glasses off. He's like, can you fix this? He's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, can you uncrush it? He's like, nobody wants stuff uncrushed. This wants stuff crushed. Like, people ask you to unpunch some guy. Can you do it? And Mr. Incredible's just like, I don't have time for this. So that was a pretty funny line, I thought.
Yeah.
Someone asked you to unpunch something.
So they're enacting this plan while Elastigirl goes after Evelyn in her like escape
trying to
plane.
escape on she tries to take her brother with her, but her brother's like, F this, like I am not on board with this crap, and so he gets off. And
yeah.
And so Void helps her get on the plane, and there's a few mishaps because she's all nervous and whatever, but like she gets on there.
And there's a scene. By the way, this was kind of interesting, I think. So like she intentionally like gets into high pressure areas and like a lot of turbulence, and she has a mask, but Elastigirl doesn't, so she's starting to get hypoxia, and it's just sort of like, oh, that's not good or whatever. And then straight up shoots a flare gun.
Shoots a flare right at the lady's back through the window, and I'm like, well, she's dead.
I made a ooh face for like the next 5 minutes. I was like, Dave, did she just
murdered that lady?
Really?
Straight up. But no, she didn't. Somehow she's alive.
I read that she was able to keep a calm mind like while having hypoxia because she is a trained pilot, and they do have to train for that sort of stuff.
I mean, that makes sense, except leading up to that moment, she was definitely very goofy and did not seem to have a calm mind.
People were saying that she was like faking it. Whatever.
I thought that she might have been faking it, but then it cleared that like it was weird. I get that theory. It's probably what they were going for because they did establish in Incredibles 1 that she's a trained pilot. They don't go into it too much, but
yeah,
I get it. I buy that. It wasn't communicated great, but
it's inconsequential too.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, she murders this person, except not.
So she saves her from falling down into the ocean abyss, and they save the boat. Frozone mostly to the rescue here by like making a whole lot of snow as like a cushion so that it doesn't actually crash into a building. This is the part where it gets a little more confusing in my opinion, because afterwards everybody is saved and Evelyn is in custody, and then Winston is just sort of like, yeah, we'll see each other again.
Yeah.
And Frozone's like, should we check up on that? And Elastigirl's like, I'm off duty. Like, and then that's it.
I I'll have to see this scene again, but in the moment I didn't think much of it because you were like, oh, he says something like, I see good things in the future, and then like walks off, and I'm just like, eh. It seems consistent with his character where he's like the eternal optimist and always trying to upsell stuff. I don't know that he's. What is his motivation? That they threw his sister in jail? Like, he abandoned ship from his sister when his sister was like, I'm taking you with me. This is like what we're doing. And he's like, heck no, it's not. Like, you're insane. Well, and he gets off that himself, not knowing whether or not the boat would actually crash or not. Like,
you would think, though, that if they ended it like that, he'd be like shaking their hands like, oh, thank you so much. I have no idea what my sister was thinking, yada, yada. I
felt like they did kind of have a moment like that.
He had one line and then walked away. And then why would Frozone have to say, like, should we check up on that if there wasn't something suspicious going down?
I don't know. I'm hoping for better from them, I guess. I think that'd be really dumb if next movie he's the bad guy or whatever.
Well, maybe I'm missing something then. I mean, I don't
know if you're missing something. I think you might be reading too much into it, but maybe you're reading exactly too much into it and I'm giving them too much credit that they wouldn't do something that dumb, but maybe they will. I don't know. I hope you're wrong, but yeah, maybe not.
So anyways, since they did in fact sign the papers, supers are actually legal.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty much it.
That's actually pretty much it. Yeah. Cause I think like after that, like Violet like reintroduces herself to Tony at school. Even like, oh, you're the girl from the restaurant, right?
Yeah. No, I don't know who that idiot
was. That is it, right? Like what's the final like scene?
Oh, because they're going to the movies with him as a family.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's like cop car in distance. And so Violet shoves him out and is like, oh, get the tickets. I'll be right in with you. And then they like go off and their car changes into the Incredimobile. And yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. No end credit scenes except for a small little animation of the Underminer's car like actually popping out at like the bottom of the screen. Kind of cute. Not teasing a sequel. Just
if there is a sequel, I'm sure he'll be at the beginning of it again.
Yeah, perhaps.
Somehow. Yeah.
So that's Incredibles 2. In summation, not necessarily better than the first, but still
absolutely not better than the first, but a really good movie.
Yes.
It like I went in expecting nothing and I had a really good time. Like I enjoyed my time with this movie. I thought it was a very good movie. It has those small issues, but like, so it's on the low end of an 8 instead of a 10 like The Incredibles. You'll still see an 8 movie, right? Like that's a good movie.
Yeah.
And you'll have a good time because it's superhero stuff and they do lots of fun superhero stuff and it'll be really tropey, but you'll have a good time. And if you don't focus too much on those little threads, which you don't really have to, they're not really big deals, you're going to have a good time. This is a good time of a movie.
It's really nice that this was 15 years in the making.
Yeah.
But they could have made it 2 years later with the same like story and it would have been acceptable. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't seem like the thing is like Brad Bird said that he didn't want to make a sequel until they had like the right story and like the right yada yada whatnot. And like I'm like, okay, so 15 years you could have maybe done a little better. I don't know.
I mean, that's fair. You wonder if this was the right story, if it was the right time to make some money.
Yeah.
But for a movie to make, like, it was good. Like, we're nitpicking here because it's not a fantastic movie. It's a really good movie. And you're going to have a good time watching it. I have no regrets seeing this in theaters.
Right.
I don't want to give the impression at all that I didn't enjoy my time there almost entirely. But it's not The Incredibles 1. It's not as good as The Incredibles 1. And it's just hard to strike lightning twice like that. Like, I don't even disbelieve Brad Bird so much that they thought they had the right story. I don't know. It's so hard to strike lightning twice like that. Like, I don't think it was ever going to be as good as the first. And if it was, you'd like put Brad Bird and like freeze his head and like keep it forever so we can keep making movies for us, right?
I mean, that'd be
incredible.
Those were exactly my apprehensions. I was just like, I was like, you don't make Mona Lisa the sequel, like you don't. Like that movie was like a solid 9+ out of 10. Like. There's no way, at least in our minds, that it was going to live up to it. It didn't, but it did do it still was a good movie.
You didn't leave the movie thinking like, man, they didn't live up to it. You left thinking, wow, that was a really good movie and I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad they made it. Like it wasn't. No,
Solo.
It is not as good, but it does not sully it doesn't sully the Incredibles name at all.
It wasn't Solo, a Star Wars movie.
Okay. Slip that in there.
I had to. I just have to.
Yeah. It was good. And I feel like there were a lot of little things that we could talk about more that I'm just not remembering. We discussed some of it with our wives afterwards, and it was actually a really good talk, but
we had to sort of stifle ourselves a little bit also.
We tried.
Even our wives knew, longer, like, are you guys going to podcast about this? We're like, I mean, I think we have to. Right?
Yeah.
But I think we got out most of it anyways, and all the important stuff as well also.
I think so.
Overall, I mean, like, you couldn't have any bigger critics on this movie than us, honestly. Yeah. And we're saying go see it.
Yeah.
We're absolutely saying go see it, you know?
Yeah. The epilepsy thing really sucks. The more my wife talked about it, like I hate even saying it this much, but this is what my wife wanted me to contribute to this, right? Your wife had your thing, my wife had mine. And it does suck. Like, when you think about it, the fact that it does cut out a lot of people, when you're thinking about how good you can rate a movie when it's like entirely unwatchable by a certain portion of people, like that's problematic. But
I wonder what they have to do to fix that then.
I don't know. I wonder if it's in the works already. If it somehow did slip under their nose. To release
a sort of like toned down version,
we're
I guess.
Sorry. Yeah. Like maybe it'll be something in like the DVD release. I don't know.
Because what's weird is that I haven't heard anything about this actually. Like,
I mean, I think my wife had to go look for it a little bit. I don't think it's
maybe they're trying to hush the press a little bit.
I mean,
maybe.
Probably. I mean, look, the press has had plenty to talk about and everything else, and this is not sensationalized enough for it to make like the main news. You know,
you got me there.
That's the world we live in. But it doesn't surprise me when she pointed it out. I'm like, I can't imagine there'd be no incidents of this, right? You know,
but yeah, I'd give it an 8.
Yeah.
And an 8 is more than enough cause for you to see it in theaters, I think.
Yeah. It is a good movie to see in theaters.
So if you heard this whole cast without seeing the movie, what is wrong with you? We spoiled the whole thing. But if you had already and you were just listening to this cast again, hopefully you agree with the 8. You know, I know some people who said that they liked this one over the first one.
I think you're nuts. I can't be too hard on you because they're both good movies, but I think you're nuts. I think the first one is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I'd point out really, really quick, music in this movie didn't really do it that much for me.
Yeah, it was fine.
It was just fine, which is definitely a disappointment coming from the mind blow that was Incredibles, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same team, Michael Giacchino and Gordon Goodwin.
Like Gordon Goodwin in the first one, all he did was the end credits, actually. So I don't know if that was the case in this one. I'm 100% sure.
I think he had a bigger hand in this one.
It seemed like it, yeah. I know for sure he did the end credits because there was a lick in there I heard that reminded me, oh yeah, that's very Gordon Goodwin. I wonder if he did this one too, since he did the first one. And yeah, he definitely was involved with the score making. So, but it mostly just kind of sounded like kind of awkward rehashes of themes you heard in the first movie. Yeah. You know, it was like those themes, but there was like a weird wrinkle or weird time signature thing in there so that you couldn't like sing along with it to make it unpredictable. But it just kind of threw it off a little bit. Not that it was ever bad, but I can't remember any scene where I was like, oh, I really liked the music in this scene, you know?
Yeah.
Like I can always think back to the montage in Incredibles 1 of like the training montage. Like there's so much like thank you. There's so much iconic music in that one. And there was like a montage thing like that in this movie, right? It was kind of like a play. It was a minor one where it was like him studying and stuff and like being a good dad. So it's kind of a little minor play on that, but it wasn't as memorable. Parts because I have no idea what the music was during that part.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
The animation was great. It was kind of interesting that I feel like they went kind of a different direction with the faces of people. I feel like they tried to make them a little more realistic. Like they were still very cartoony, but like not quite as cartoony as the first one. Like when I compare like the old lady that Dash saved at the beginning of this movie to the old lady who Mr. Incredible saves her cat in the first movie, like the second one was much more like realistically proportioned and had a face you could see, or like even like the ambassador in this movie versus the lady at the beginning of the first Incredible who's saying like it is time for Super's secret identity to be their only identity. Like it was slightly less stylized. Not saying it was better or worse, but it was a little bit different. That's all. So
didn't bother me.
No, it didn't bother me, but I noticed it.
You have a higher standard though.
I guess. I don't know. Also, Rick Dicker's voice sucked.
You haven't mentioned that at all. Yeah, my goodness. What is wrong with you? You let the littlest details bother you so deeply, and yet you diatribe so much.
You're one to tell me.
It didn't bother me. It didn't bother me. And then here we go, full freaking circle at the end of the episode.
I thought it'd be good.
So with that, let's go ahead and conclude this.
That sounds good.
Watch the movie. We enjoyed it.
Yep.
We think it's not as good as the first, but we do think it's a good movie.
Yep.
So
good job, Pixar. You didn't crush our hopes and dreams.
So thank you for joining us on this extremely spoiler-written movie cast. If you haven't seen the movie yet, shame on you. If you have, please share with us your thoughts. If you are one of those who didn't like or who preferred this movie over the first one, let us know. We want to fight. We want to fight with you.
Fight.
So, all right. Thanks for joining us on this. Special thanks, of course, to Danny Barry Huvert for the artwork and the combined efforts of Rob KTA and Expert Knobs OC Remix for the intro and outro music. We're good, Dave?
We're good.
All righty. Well, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Take care.